Well, it's good to see everybody. Welcome to our 60th anniversary celebration, our annual meeting. We're celebrating all year long. We have survived this long, still doing good work. And we're glad to see all of you here today. I want to point out our, well, we're going to, let me just say, we're going to keep you muted. And if you need to get through to the host of this meeting, you can put it in the chat. The chat is at the bottom of your screen, and you can put it in the chat just to the host if you want to, or everyone can see it. But that way you could communicate and ask to be unmuted if you are having some trouble. We've decided to call this annual meeting Celebrating Life from Beginning to End, because perhaps even more than ever before this year, we've really realized how precious life is. But also we've thought back, and Kathy Hall has done a lot of research into the old archives, all the old minutes and who did what and said what, and 3 boxes of historical documents she went through as we thought about our beginnings as an organization way back in the 60s. We have been very fortunate to have some sponsors that we want to call to your attention. Our gold level sponsor is Chi Perm Credit Union. And I am a great proponent of credit unions. Like OMA, they're owned by their members. So that, I think, is one of the greatest appeals to me. And then we have some other gracious sponsors as well. A number of mortuaries that have belonged for some time, and also another credit union, the Rivermark Credit Union. But we thank these sponsors for a donation and for supporting us in our annual meeting. I don't know if any of you have bought raffle tickets, but we have a few more. Margot will have to update us on how many, but we had limited the raffle so that you had a really good chance of getting an overnight stay at the Chinook Winds Casino Resort and a dinner for 2. So that's a very nice gift. And we thought that that was rather a special thing that we could offer as a raffle. We will be selling some raffle tickets, $5 each or 5 for $20. That will be open until we've had a break. At the end, after our speaker, we'll have a short break before we have our annual meeting and reports and election of some new board members. But we also thank the Portland Japanese Garden for their donation of a couple of tickets that we are going to be giving as a door prize. So let us just talk a little bit. If we haven't muted you, please keep muted, because we don't want to hear everyone's dog barks or cell phones ringing or whatever interruptions at your home. If you need to ask a question, or as I've said, make a comment or get help or something, type your question into the chat box, and we will answer that either by the chat, if it's a one-to-one personal thing, or if it's a question for our speaker, we will incorporate that into the program. So let me see. Just, even though I think most of you know what OMA is, I wanted to go over that who we are. OMA is an independent and now completely nonprofit organization dedicated to helping Oregon consumers choose dignified, meaningful, and affordable end-of-life services. We were founded in 1961 And thousands of people have joined. I don't even know how many, but we believe that we are around still 7,000 or 8,000 members. We're still trying to be sure and keep in contact with all of our members, but that's what we believe. But through the years, I don't know how many people have been helped and received our educational programs and benefited from some of our mortuary discounts. In the early 2000s, many local mortuaries were sold to the big national chains, and our whole work began to change a little bit. Cooperation from those two chains it eliminated quite a lot of contracts that we had with cooperating mortuaries until that time. And one of the reasons in the early days, one of the things that happened was mortuaries would send a small administrative fee whenever anyone died and they served one of our members. And so we got information. It's one of the ways that we've been able to keep up with who is still alive and how many members we do have. And that's it's gotten more tenuous. We don't get the administrative fees from them nearly as much. But at some point, and it was, I don't have the date, maybe RCA would be able to fill that in today, but OMA was established originally as a membership organization, which is a 501c4, and that is not strictly nonprofit. I mean, it's not, but it's strictly to serve members. As the vision became more to do more public education and not only serve our own members, but serve the general public, and as we needed a vehicle to get tax deductions for our donors, we established an arm called the Funeral Consumers Education Foundation, FCEF, which was a nonprofit side by side with OMA. And our staff member served that organization and processed donations, and we worked side by side, but it was quite complicated. And 2 years ago, we decided to simply make it simpler, and we are now a nonprofit. The C4 has gone away, and we are now a 501c3, and anything that is donated to us is tax deductible, and it changes the reporting. It's half of the reporting we did before. We still focus largely on advocacy and education, but we still are working to get the contracts and discounts whenever we can with mortuaries. And basically, as I said earlier about the credit unions, we exist for you, for members, and for the general public. Everyone is potentially a funeral consumer, needless to say. So that is our mission, is broadly to create educated funeral consumers as much as we can. And now I'm going to introduce a history, a theatrical sort of history. And I think it's a recorded, a video that has been recorded based on some of the things that Kathy Hall has found in these boxes of historical information.
Go ahead.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. In the early 1960s, Bobby Bornett was a young attorney who employed a cleaning lady. Her husband died, and she went to the funeral home to see about arrangements. It was determined she would have to pay 2 years' salary for their services. Bobby was incensed when he found this out, and he went to the funeral home himself to try to negotiate on her behalf. They said no. So he paid this funeral out of his own pocket. Then he went to friends. He contacted his pastors at UU Church of Portland, Alan Deal and Richard Steiner. They gathered a Methodist minister, a Catholic priest, and a rabbi, and together built their ideas on some of the same principles as funeral services for all in Washington State. They started contacting funeral homes in Oregon. None at the time, except O'Regan's, understood the need for education as well as financial assistance for the people of Oregon. So in 1961, the Oregon Memorial Association was born, having about 28 members in a very short order. By 1965, OMA was a flourishing organization serving its 2,165 members, even though only one mortuary participated with OMA, Little Chapel of the Chimes, owned by Ellsworth Purdy.
This is living life to the full in midlife.
All was going well with OMA until one funeral home owner in Oregon did not follow through with pre-made arrangements. What he did instead was sad, terrible. His actions affected the entire industry. Shortly after this event, the industry seemed to come to life and realized there needed to be strong oversight of the entire business of death, from care of the person who died to transportation, mortuaries. The entire cremation process was starting to be a new popular method of body care and burial. OMA became involved in controversy over body care, advocating loving cleansing and care of the body immediately following death. OMA was recognized in a 1984 article in the consumer-oriented nonprofit organization dedicated to sensible, pre-planned, minimum cost mortuary, memorial, and funeral services. OMA was at that time a member of Continental Association for National Promotion of the Funeral Industry, which later became the FCA, the Funeral Consumers of America. At this time, the Portland group was known as the Funeral Consumers Education Foundation Board, which name was preferred by Chuck Roberts, president of the Oregon group, who was also on the FCA board. This name was never adopted because a federal agency denied it. And so it went back to the OMA. Of course, the OMA board had discrepancies of opinion over membership cost, whether or not to have an executive secretary or a secretary of the board, what the treasurer would be responsible for, bylaws, which organization to place and dispense the funds, and ultimately what to call the organization. OMA, FCAO, or FCEF. The name and its purpose continued in discussion for years.
Somewhere through the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I grew up once in a lullaby. Somewhere through the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dream really do come true. These past 21 years have seen many advances from the final decision to change from belonging to any national funeral organizations back to being known as the Oregon Memorial Association for Good. We've run the gamut from a robust financial situation to struggling for sustainability after a 2016 embezzlement of funds. Our emphasis now, for the last few years, has been serving the people of Oregon. The funeral industry has become more competitive with more and more players, more points of view, and different understanding of the meaning of dignified and affordable. Pre-planning has become more important as more alternatives have become popular. A work we'll call The Plan That Works was written, tested, and ready to begin. But then in 2016, it became All's Well That Ends Well, and it's known as AW. Several hundred Oregonians all over the state have now made decisions making them feel more at ease about their end-of-life plans due to this AW workbook. The struggle for our continuation as an organization and our financial stability have been relentless. But thanks to many caring members, we look to the future with hope and assurance. Many dedicated board members have worked creatively to keep us a thriving organization, promoting healthy relationships with mortuaries, finding ways to best serve our membership, and informing the public of OMA, Oregon Memorial Association concerns. As a board member once said, we have a good product. People just need to find out about us. So help us spread the word and get involved. What will the next 20 years of OMA bring us and our 12,282 fabulous members? We hope you will continue to appreciate your membership in OMA, or join us if not yet a member, and encourage others to join as well. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where I
Thank you. I want to thank Kathy Hall for all the conceiving and planning this and bringing together to record. That's her fellow residents of Willamette View. And quite a few are members OMA members, we thank you for putting that presentation together. And so now I want to introduce Bill Harris, who is going to introduce our speaker. And just as you see the Zoom instructions on your screen, type any questions you have into a chat box. I see a few of you have some personal questions that we can answer probably individually, maybe call you. But if you are on the phone, you want to press *9 to raise your hand for a question. And then when called upon, since you can't type it in, press *6 to mute or unmute yourself at that time. Now take it away, Bill.
Okay. For one thing, we'll want a picture that shows the speaker as soon as we get her forward. I'm introducing the speaker. On the screen now is a book she wrote. Elizabeth Fournier began her career in 1990 in Portland, where she was employed as a live-in night keeper, sleeping in a trailer in a Portland, Oregon cemetery. 30 years later, she is a one-woman funeral service in the rural town of Boring, Oregon. Elizabeth owns and operates Cornerstone Funeral Services, where she is affectionately known as the Green Reaper for her green burial advocacy. She's also the manager of historic Columbian Cemetery, Portland's newest green burial choice. Elizabeth is the author of the Green Burial Guidebook, which you see on the screen. Everything you need to plan an affordable, economically, environmental friendly burial. She serves on the advisory board of the Green Burial Council and is a member of their Speakers Bureau. She recently gave a TED Talk called Going Green, the last act of environmental volunteerism. People magazine wrote, quote, Elizabeth Fournier is doing her part to change the way Americans bury their dead. Friends, I now give you our speaker of the annual meeting, Elizabeth Fournier.
Thank you. Very gracious words. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm very honored to be here. This is a big deal. You've been around 60 years. Most nonprofits and organizations don't go anywhere at that point. That's pretty fantastic. If you can see behind me here, these are a bunch of natural caskets, just to give you a little bit of a look here. These are all made by a local artisan, a Vietnam veteran. There's a shrouding board, and behind me is a shroud on a shrouding board, and there is some standing up, just to give you a little bit of taste of what a green burial funeral home looks like. I'm in my technical casket selection room. I guess that's how we put it. So I'm going to put the glasses on because I can't see very well. I'm going to share my screen. I've got some slides to show you, because how else do we talk about this magnificent subject without actually showing you from the beginning? There we go. I'm going to take myself off the video so you don't have to, just so you can actually just see this. So I believe at this point you should see my picture taking the screen, correct? And you can hear me. All right. All right. So really, you know, the title is really perfect. I think saving the planet one death at a time is just truly what the world needs now. We need to really think about reducing our carbon footprint and going out in an eco-friendly style. So I'm an advocate of green burials. I understand that all types of burial is absolutely necessary. 80% of Oregonians choose standard flame cremation, and that is absolutely fantastic. People want to be embalmed, people want to do everything, and how wonderful. I think if somebody has any idea what will comfort them and get them through this process, that's great. I'm happy to explain some ways that we can be kind of share some green out in nature and also save the green in the wallet. So that's what I am here to do today. This is a lovely person in a shroud, which is just a sheet off a bed. Doesn't need to be anything fancy, just a sheet off a bed with some natural flowers out of a garden. So green burial is a way to care for our dead with the least possible environmental impact. It's the body preparations and the burial practices that allow the body to decompose naturally in a specific place that's set aside for environmental resting. And the basics are the body is not filled with embalming chemicals. It's not placed in any sort of a casket or container that won't biodegrade, and it's not placed in the ground in a vault in a grave. That end goal of green burial is they want nothing that's used that doesn't help replenish the soil, because again, we're giving back to the earth, we're going green. Our last environmental step is giving ourselves technically by literally and physically going green. So I was blessed with my love for green burial 16 years ago out here in Boring, Oregon. I got this wonderful phone call when I first started at Cornerstone. And this family called and they wanted to meet me at a local pub and they wanted to discuss the death of a friend who passed away recently. They wanted Wanda the Wanderer to stay on the property, have a home burial, have a home funeral, and make this happen. And, I had to be pretty transparent with them and say, gosh, I've only worked at corporations and the Catholic Church, and that's not how we did it, but this sounds fascinating, and I want to help you with this. So let's work together and let's make this happen. And she got her name of Wanda the Wanderer because we were filling out the vital statistics for the death certificate. And we talked about her occupation and her industry. And they just sort of said, well, her occupation is she's a wanderer and her industry is the earth. So she just became Wanda the Wanderer. I had to say, Vital Records probably will kick that death certificate back to me. So we probably need to put something else, but how wonderful that they could just be true to who she was and talk about these things. So the next morning, we were able to lay her to rest in materials and a comforter that she had made years prior with her own little gentle hands. Her tiny little frame was cloaked in this. And we had this just grave on this property in rural Clackamas County. And we were able to hold hands and speak kindness about her, and people were able to sing. And afterwards, the grave was covered with some earth, and on top of the earth, that little tiny knoll came together with a little plant. And we just decided that this was just such a perfect day that we feasted on fish caught by her sons at the Clackamas River. There was a closing prayer, and it was just this fabulous day that really opened my eyes to all the possibilities out there to help families move through their grief and some alternative choices and things that were legal and things that were ethical and things that were environmental and affordable. I thought, wow, this is really, really feeling like something I want to do. So as I drove home, it just clicked for me. I thought my calling for the death industry was because half of my household at a very small age, everyone had died. And I thought, well, at a young age, I wanted to be a funeral director or be in the funeral arts because of that. But then I realized after all these years, 15 years later in my career, I think it was a watershed moment where I realized that green burial makes the most excellent sense because we come from nature and nature is really where we return. And it's fun to know that even 16 years later, this group of family that live on this intentional community, they still drop by the funeral home. They bring me vegetables. They still stop to say hello and hug and all this. And we've really made a special connection. And it's been wonderful to be able to provide that for families throughout the time. So some history here. So just so you know what happened back in the day is really 150 years ago, green burial, natural burial. This is what we did. We kept a loved one at home. We had the women that came out. They were the layers of the dead. They were the ones who washed the loved one and dressed them and groomed them, and the men dug the graves. And this whole process from the start to the finish, it really brought family and community together. Death was this incredible intimate experience. And this is all until the Civil War came about, all right? Civil War, big factor in how we change the funeral industry. But visitations and things would happen at home. The front parlor in the house served really as the original funeral parlor. We would have the loved one there, then we would take them out and put them into some sort of a vehicle like this or in the back of the pickup, and we brought them to the church or the cemetery for burial. And this changed because the Civil War came along. And what happened was a lot of bodies needed to come home. There were soldiers that passed away and their families wanted them to come back. So without any sort of refrigeration, the transportation of the deceased, it was really, really problematic. A doctor out in the field came up with this idea to slow the decomposition with embalming. And he had this elixir. It was arsenic and soap and mercury and water, and allow bodies to be preserved and placed on trains and brought home. The most famous example of this is back in 1865, our beloved President Lincoln passed away, and his son, who had died 3 years earlier, his precious Willie, he was exhumed, and both of these people were embalmed and they were placed together, and they traveled over 1,600 miles by this presidential train through 180 cities in 7 different states. And if you think about that, that is amazing. And that got him from Washington all the way back to Springfield, Illinois, where his burial was going to be. But he was lowered. This is his, if you look on the left there, his hearse. I mean, the train was there, the caisson came and got him. He was lowered into this vehicle. He was brought through the throngs of people to either a stateroom or wherever he was going to be viewed, and people lined up and passed him by. And because this was so huge and this such extended publicity, this really made embalming take center stage, and the death care industry was really born because people realized, I want to be preserved. I want to have a funeral fit for a president. And that's how we changed a lot with our, oh, I moved ahead there. That's how we changed ahead with what we did. So to this slide right here, this is the cemeteries in Oregon and Washington that allow green burial. I'm not quite sure how I jumped ahead, but just to finish up what I was saying there. A lot of the industry had changed, where all of a sudden, kind of what we talked about earlier in the video, we had a lot of sales and marketing, and all of a sudden we were having expensive merchandise and goods and services. And it really took it out of the family's hands and became, someone passes away, we whisk you away to the mortuary, and then what do you want your tombstone to look like, or your casket? And pretty soon, like those commercials, the average funeral is $10,000, and that was happening. So now what's happening is many people, especially in Oregon and Washington, are saying, I would like to get back to basics and what we did before. And a green burial is something that I think I want to do. And how do I do this? And it really is a bit overwhelming. So I tell families, start backwards. And if you want to be buried in a cemetery, take a look at what's there. And this slide, I think, is so very important. And I can email this to somebody. These names are on my website, cornerstonefuneral.com. The reason why is because all these cemeteries allow natural burial. They either have the whole cemetery for natural burial, or there's a section, or there's places that allow whatever grave inside there. And this natural burial could be someone who is in a wood box or an alternative container, buried without any sort of embalming chemicals and placed directly into the soil without having that burial vault. And all these places do that. People are blown away by that. But you see the word Portland, Oregon. This is in the city limits of Portland. And this is something that is available. All right, so this is what Riverview Cemetery looks like. This is a very beloved cemetery in the southwest of Portland, right across the Selwood Bridge. And this is a standard looking lowering device, and it's standard looking mowed grass and grounds. And David Noble, who was a part of OMA for a very long time, just a dear, wonderful soul, decided, hey, why don't we go ahead and have this where everybody can be buried pretty much wherever they want throughout the park. So this is a family who has their loved one wrapped up in some fabric from Joann's Fabric. He really liked Hawaii, so we had everyone dressed the part. In the front right there, you see a lovely lady in her sarong, and she did a wonderful dance to the sunset. And it was just a wonderful day. So that is what a green burial can look like. This is historic Columbian Cemetery, North Columbian Boulevard. And this is 7 acres, which is right below I-5 in a very industrial area. But look at that. There's a natural green garden in the back of the cemetery. So you sort of get transported out of the grit and the industry to this lovely, peaceful place. Also right here, this is Herland Forest. That was on the list. This is only 80 miles from Portland in the state of Washington. And this is what some of their spaces look like. We have the natural trees. It really looks like a wonderful forested area. And this looks a little bit different than a traditional cemetery, but this is a loved one in a shroud placed directly into the ground. Another choice for natural burial is backyard burial. And I know this doesn't appeal to everybody. And I also realize that not everybody can do this. How this reads is there are about 45 states in the US that say you can do this, meaning only 5 states say that bodies must be buried in an established cemetery. And would you be shocked to learn the only 5 states who don't allow home burial are Arkansas, California, Indiana, Louisiana, and Washington. So the 2 states that border Oregon, but Oregon says yes. And how this works is most of the states say it depends on where you are. So Multnomah County says, heck no, you can have many acres, but no, not Multnomah. Clackamas reads, if you're in a rural part of the county and you have at least 1 acre, yeah, it's probably pretty workable. So this is what a backyard burial would look like. You have an area that you say, yeah, okay, this looks like a good place for a loved one. Notice there's a lot of sandy loam here, and they were able to dig a space. Of course, we need to work out the variables. How do we get the loved one from either inside the house or from the vehicle to this space? But again, that's what a lot of the book I wrote was about. And that's a lot of the questions I get is people saying, okay, we want to do this, but can you come walk the property? Because gosh, there's a rocky outcropping here, or I think it might be too close to the river, or I think we might be near a watershed. So those sort of questions is where I come in, as well as some of the logistics of what type of a container we are going to use. What are we going to do? Have you called your local zoning and planning board to ask to make sure your address and your parcel is suitable? Things like, have you received permission from the landowner? Things like that is very important as well. Private land burial in Oregon, the law permits it as long as things like you agree to maintain a record, which lets people know where the property is. If you decide to sell, you're going to disclose human remains are buried on the property. And then there's some environmental standards. People always want to know these. Very important that your site specifically of where the burial is going to be, we need it to be 150 feet from like a tributary or creek or a water supply. And if there's a drilled well, maybe 100 feet from there. Also power lines, we need to think about that, 25 feet back from a power line. And then also think about, let's say you have 40 acres and you're thinking, I'll go way in the back by the blackberry bushes, but right across the fence is your neighbor's house. Again, you want to be set back a little bit from other people's property, just because it's just, probably the kind way to make that happen. All right, so I'm kind of giving you a quick overview in my time. So we're kind of moving around a little bit, but just want to give you some nuggets to chew on and digest and have stuff to Google and ask me about as well. So also in Oregon, you can transport a body in a personal vehicle. You don't have to hire the funeral parlor. You can use a station wagon or a minivan or a truck or whatever to make this happen. There's a loved one right there in what we call an air tray, and they're in a shroud, which is probably just a sheet from a bed. And you can even bring somebody from your house or from the hospital or a nursing home and bring them to the crematory, the cemetery, all those things. But again, we want to make sure we have a death certificate legally signed. We want to make sure the cemetery, the crematory knows you're coming. I mean, we have to work in real time and we have to work with logistics, but nonetheless, things legally and ethically can happen, which can save you a lot of money and again, be environmental. I thought this was really cute. This family says, we want to drive grandma to the cemetery. And so the young man there that you can see peeking over on the left, he had a truck and he put funeral coach on top, which I just thought was really sweet. That was really neat to see that. All right, so these are some of the alternative containers, just some examples of what people can use for a burial. Cardboard is environmentally sound. That can be put in a grave. So can wool. So can wicker, so can seagrass, so can banana. There's newspaper, there's a shroud, there's pine. And when it comes to wood caskets, a lot of wood is suitable. We prefer the softer woods, but also with the wood casket, there isn't metal, there isn't toxic glue. A lot of these things can be made with dowels. And you notice with the handles there, that isn't hardware for the handles, that is rope where we can use the wood and we can make those things happen. This is bags. These are burlap sacks. This is a wonderful man who I went to go visit, and he said, "Kid, I've got these sacks in my garage. Let's take a look at them." And we did. And I said, "Sir, these will be fantastic." So when he passed away, it was such an honor to go to his house and tell his kids that we have those sacks out there that he wants, and to wrap him in that. And they thought Dad was a little bit kooky for this, but then they saw him on the lowering board and they thought, you know what, that is so Dad, that is so personal. That's really the right thing to do. So that's one neat thing about natural burial. A lot of times you can be very creative and come up with different things that, as long as it's going to biodegrade, you can use. And he's held on to these sacks for decades. How neat is that? He had a free casket in his garage all these years. Kind of neat. So this is a gentleman putting a kit together. He is making his own casket. If families want to do their own thing, that's wonderful. As long as the material can bear the weight of the individual, as long as it has handles, as long as it can fit into the burial space. We have to work with dimensions. I mean, again, we have to work with reality pieces, but nonetheless, that can work just fine. That can happen. This is sort of what it looks like when a family brings me, this is an empty casket, when a family brings me an empty casket and say, "Here, we bought this from a friend or a neighbor, or got this off the internet, or we built this in our garage," or what have you. This is kind of what that looks like. We just have it really, there it is in the bed of the truck. This picture, I find this really fun too. This is an empty casket as well, but this was a very daring delivery that came to me a couple of years ago. And I said, "Can I snap a picture of this? This is very unbelievable." I said, it's amazing you did that. I'm so thrilled you did that. And yeah, that probably wins maybe one of the all-time thing. I mean, think about people on the road seeing you and what their perception is of this, and it's empty and it's legal and it's fine, but that could have been a pretty bad accident waiting to happen. So in December, I was very fortunate to be a part of the very first NOR, which is natural organic reduction. And this happened in Herland Forest. There are 3 places in the state of Washington that do allow natural organic reduction, which people hear of called human composting. And the decedent, you can see the top left there, that is the vessel that we use. We call it the cradle. You see, kind of rocks back and forth really effortlessly. The decedent was laid to rest in some wood chips. And then you see in the middle there, there's some more wood chips. This is on top of the loved one who'd passed away. And it really balances out the carbon to nitrogen ratio, which is important. There's a lot of bacterial naturally found in people's bodies, but we really help that also by adding some bacteria and some fungi and some protozoa. And then we put a lid on here at the bottom. We secure that on. And the key requirement for natural organic reduction is the remains need to reach a temperature of at least 131 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has to hold that temperature for 3 days. So my daughter took these pictures. She was 13 years old at the time. And I really loved the fact she was interested to come up and see this thing that her mother was doing, and no one else had been a part of this. And it was fun to do. And I really would have rethought those red socks in the top left picture if I knew that these pictures would be making all over national media. But you do what you can do. I should have listened to the 13-year-old who said, "Mom, are you really going to wear those red socks?" "Yeah, I'm going to work in the woods. I'm not very fashion forward ever, so didn't think much of it." This is another green method, burial at sea. You do not need to be in the military. You don't need to be a Kennedy. I think people think this is something that's not for every man and woman, but definitely can be. This releases the body into the ocean. It sinks and it decomposes naturally. And this is green because the container is going to be something biodegradable. And for a burial sea to be legal, we have to have, it's federal because it's out into the ocean waters. We need to be 3 miles off the coast. We need to have, 600 feet depth going on. The sea captain needs to be able to know what's going on. And then if you have a body on board like this, the funeral director does need to be with the body. So again, there are regulations, but there's ways that these things can happen. This is in Portland. This is called the Green Machine. This is aqua dissolution. And aqua dissolution, if that doesn't sound familiar, have you heard of biocremation, alkaline hydrolysis, flameless cremation? This is what that is. Rather than that high heat of the flame, this is water. And it's using water to bring body back to a really natural state. It's eco-friendly, and it accelerates the natural decomposition process, and it breaks down the remains to ashes. You ultimately get a box back with ashes, and people are thrilled to know that. So you can still scatter the ashes, bury the ashes, keep them at home. Also, the water in here is called effluent, and you can have that water back. And I've had families take gallons of it home and either put it in their fertilizer to spray, or they put it into their like their plant garden or something. They thought it was really neat because that whole circle of life. I mean, that's pretty darn fascinating. So it happens. It's a real greener approach to cremation because of that reduces the use of the fossil fuels, and it doesn't release any of the harmful gases and chemicals, and it doesn't contribute to pollution. So there's some reasons why people are excited about that. Okay, almost done, wrapping it up here pretty quick. This is just a seagrass casket with some natural flowers. And green burial is something that's legal in all 50 states. I'm always really happy to tell people that. It's also called natural burial. It's just that idea of, if you find a cemetery where they don't require a grave liner or a grave vault, then you have a cemetery which will allow natural burial. So you could do something made by hand, buy something. All funeral homes can help you with this. You can get things, a lot of information online. There's a couple different books about things. Again, a lot of information if you have an interest. And with natural burial, I tell people that even when they come in to see me and they say, well, I don't know, that's not how we've done it. We don't necessarily want to have a natural burial. I'll say, well, let's just green up your experience a bit. Why don't we carpool? Or why don't we gently ask people to not bring their single-use Starbucks cup? Or maybe we can have somebody bring, plants, oops, that just moved right along. Plants rather than flowers, memorial folders that were made out of recycled paper, or maybe even sustainable food. So this is the end of my slides here. This is my book. Check it out from the library. No reason to cut down a tree to make a new copy. Buy it used, get it from your library. If your library doesn't happen, ask for it to be there. Bookshare. Just, you can get the information on all these different things I talked about. And if you want more information, if any of you are on Instagram, if that's something someone does, I'm Elizabeth Green Reaper, and I do my day-to-day life of shrouding people and burying and all these different things that go on. Also, Green Burial Portland is a Facebook group. If somebody likes Facebook, that's an option. Also, you can call me at the parlor, email me anytime. Happy to answer any questions. Okay. So I'm going to get my screen off here. Thank you for watching. I'm always thrilled when people want to hear about green burial. They want to know what's going on in the zeitgeist of it all. I'm going to end my show. And what I want to do is turn this over. A wonderful advocate for natural burial in the natural world was Mr. Pete Seeger. I think hopefully a bunch of you know who he was. He is pretty fantastic. And before we have any questions that I want to take the time to answer, at this point, we want to take a little break here. And I want to turn the microphone over to the special musical stylings of the very effervescent RCA Moore.
Well, I would, but I don't see him online.
Right here.
There you are.
Nod your head if you can hear me.
Just a
Can you
minute.
hear me?
There you go. You're on.
Okay. To my old brown earth and to my bright blue sky, I'll now give these last few molecules of I. And you who sing and you who stand nearby, I do charge you not to cry. Guard well our human chain. Watch well, you keep it strong, as long as sun will shine. And this our home, keep pure and sweet and green. For now I'm yours, and also you are mine.
Thank you, RCA. We'll get back to Elizabeth here and have some questions.
So if anyone has any questions about what I was talking about there, they would like you to type them into the chat. And then I believe Charlie is going to read them to all of us.
I am, but I'm trying to get you back in the video. Sometimes this thing re-alphabetizes itself all by itself. There you are.
We do have a question that someone's already typed in the chat, and that is, are there biodegradable containers for ashes from cremation or aquamation suitable for an already established gravesite in Southeast Portland?
Yes, so if that cemetery will allow you to bury without a burial vault, meaning you can do something completely natural, you can use an urn made out of, there's salt urns, there's paper mache, there's cardboard. You can use something, if you have a little bag made out of silk, there's plenty of things you can do that way. If the cemetery says we have to use a burial vault, then you'll need to ask them what their specific requirements are. They might say, well, the minimal container we can use is plastic. And then really you're not going to necessarily do anything green, but you might be able to make it, again, shades of green. Maybe the ashes inside the container you can wrap in some cotton, or again, maybe just try to some level of doing something made out of wood, what have you. So you're sort of stuck with the requirements.
Okay, here's another question. Is embalming ever required? I heard that even airlines allow a body on ice to be chipped.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Up till recently, if you're going to transport somebody on an air carrier, you had to use embalming, but we found many airlines, Southwest, Delta, American, there's a bunch of them say, as long as we have gel packs and as long as we have somebody in the correct container, we can go ahead and do that, and that's no problem, which is wonderful. Even with driving, the rule is once somebody has passed away, they need to possibly go and am I still here?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, interesting. My whole screen went blank. My whole screen is black. But if you can see me, that's fantastic. You can use cooling packs. You can use dried ice. You can do different things to go ahead and allow somebody to transport. So you don't have to embalm that way. Embalming is important if you're going to go inside a mausoleum. That's because you're going to be entombed. You're going to be inside a space in a wall above ground, and there's pressurized gases that build up. So we want to take all of those out of you prior. So that's most mausoleums and most cemeteries will say that is definitely required.
Okay, here's another one. Since one concern expressed by OMA members is to keep the body disposition affordable, isn't a plot really expensive? Do you have any tips about where we could get buried if we want a green burial?
Right, so that's a really, really great question. If you can be buried in your yard, that's free. That's pretty fantastic. There's also some different cemeteries. There's some out here in the Estacada, Clackamas County area, and those graves are $1,000. That's going to be a lot less than other graves. So there still is the expense of you have to buy the land, you have to pay for the cemetery to open and close it. But nonetheless, that's going to be less than if you're going to buy a standard grave someplace.
Okay, let's see. We've already asked that one. Well, I think we have one more. And that is, if there's no vault or casket, doesn't a green burial spot cave in?
People do to make that not happen is they make the soil in a bit of a mound. There was a picture there that I showed that after Wanda's service, it looked like a kind of a brown mound. And we raise the earth up a little bit, so when it settles, it'll go ahead and flatten out. Some cemeteries, what they'll do is they will go back and add more soil over time. Some places don't do anything and there has been divots in the ground. This is why if you look at some cemeteries and there's this wavy, gravy sort of thing that happens, it's because there isn't a burial vault or there isn't sort of a burial liner. And so over time of heavy equipment rolling over it and the ground settling and maybe even the casket breaking down, you get little dips and waves and all of that. So it doesn't have that sexy memorial park look, but that's really what happens. So it's really a matter of, it's not going to be as pristine and as lovely as maybe having everything level and flat, but we can still find a way with soil to make it be okay.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I loved it. I loved it. We're going to turn it back over to Susan now, if I can get that done. PQ, there she is. And there you go. Nope, that was RCA. Susan, there you go. Where are you? There it is. Ah, you're just after RCA alphabetically.
That was lovely, and it's lovely to see you again, RCA. Have a good trip, but it's been a while since we've seen you. It's wonderful to have you back and singing. And Elizabeth, we are going to have Elizabeth back for a full workshop. We haven't set a date yet, but we're looking at January. So please keep in touch with us if you would like more and a real discussion and more in depth. But in the meantime, I want to thank you and Elizabeth, just a small token of our appreciation. I want you before the 31st when they close or next year when they open again to go to Shadine's Farm Stand on Highway 212 in Boring, where a small gift certificate awaits you so that you can buy a pumpkin or some apples or some fresh vegetables from that farm.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate you coming today and planning all this and such good information. So now we are going on your screen. I think you see just sort of our website link, and we do hope that you look at that frequently to get some news and updates. But let's take a 5-minute break. It is now 3:10, so let's come back at 3:15 and have a short business meeting. And we appreciate any of you that are going to stay. We will be drawing our raffle and a door prize. So that will be at the close of the meeting, but we hope that this part of the meeting will not take an agonizingly long part. We have some reports for you and some updates. So 3:15, see you in a minute. See you in 5 minutes.
Susan, can we buy raffle tickets during the break?
Yeah.
You can, and then after the break, that's going to be closed so that Margot can process it and sort out make sure we have everybody in the pot, as it were.
We only have 9 tickets left, I think.
Okay, 9 tickets to sell.
So how do you take my money?
You can go onto our website, which you see here, and under donate up top, you can select raffle, or you can type in www.omaoregon.org/raffle. And then it'll link you to PayPal. And
Good.
you make a purchase on PayPal.
Oh, well, okay.
Okay. Has everyone purchased the raffle tickets that they want? And I don't know the answer to the question about spreading ashes. That is a good question, but I don't know the answer. Do any other board members know? If one is restricted, I know, the people do it all the time. And I've heard people say, yeah, we're not supposed to, just scatter them anywhere you want to, but I don't know the answer. Is Elizabeth still with us?
I have
Hi,
not,
I'm still with you.
I have not heard of any rules or regulations about where ashes can be scattered. So long as it's not in somebody else's yard or where the ashes might get in somebody's physical nearness, like in their eyes or such. And I also don't recommend that they be thrown or scattered from an airplane. That is not a good thing to do.
Everything Kathy said is absolutely right. The airplane, they end up going over the side of the airplane. That's probably what she's alluding to. Private property, you're right. Get the owner's permission, but they say in Oregon, Washington, California, 3 miles off the coast, because they don't want everybody standing on the seashore or standing on a pier and everybody on Memorial Day deciding that they're going to scatter ashes. Even though they're purified, nothing's really going to happen. But also with waves, they do come back to shore. So they really would like you off the coast. Otherwise, scattering in the national forest or any sort of a waterway as far as a lake, as far as a river, that's fine. Thank you.
I was recently at, this is Jenny Tucker calling from Somerville. I was at Riverview Cemetery last week in Portland, and there is a sign saying, please don't scatter the ashes around the greens or the lawns or something like that. Our family has a number of plots and have had for many years, but there was a sign, a big sign saying, please don't scatter in the lawn.
I think that's because Riverview is going to be opening a special place for
Yeah.
scattering ashes.
Well, thank you. Actually, I was going to mention in my remarks that right after the annual meeting last year, we got a letter that appeared to have been redirected to our new post office box in Clackamas from Riverview, saying that they are doing some reorganization and would not renew their contract with us. So even though we have worked with them for many years and still, of course, find them to be, as Elizabeth pointed out, as a beautiful cemetery and good services, we can't offer any discounts there. Fortunately, we do have some other options, including Cornerstone. And you've just met Elizabeth, so it's not an advertisement, but the special prices are on our website. But you'll also see that Elizabeth is one of the morticians that is very transparent about what everybody pays. And so you can look on the Cornerstone website and see the prices. But she is giving discounts to our members. And I had occasion, after Riverview withdrew, I thought, well, I want to find out how far Boring really is. It's actually only about 19 miles from the courthouse downtown in Portland. So it's really very close. People think of it as being way out in the country, but it's not that far. But I'm going to go ahead and start our business meeting with a report. I am Susan Robinson, and I was co-president last year. And when I could see that the pandemic was going to prevent me from going to my home state of South Carolina for even a few months, I thought, well, it was very nice of the board members to ask me if I would be president. It's a responsibility, but it's a privilege. So, the OMA world was like yours, turned upside down in 2020 by COVID-19. But needless to say, we've survived challenges all these years. You haven't survived 60 years without responding well to challenges. So we have had to be resilient. I think there are some slides, if you go forward with the slides that kind of highlight a few of these things. We had been meeting at our board meetings. We had a few people who live outside of Portland who were coming to our meetings virtually. And so we'd have them on a big television screen, and the rest of us would be in the room. Usually we had been meeting at Willamette View, but suddenly we were all faced with using technology and interacting on Zoom. But quickly we learned at least the basics of Zoom. So the pandemic hasn't stopped us trying to organize and conducting our meetings. Neither has it stopped us holding our workshops. the All's Well That Ends Well workshop that Kathy spoke about in the opening history and presentation of our 60 years. It prepares participants to create a small team to help with end of life and funeral planning. Making use of the workbook, they can check off decisions that they must make and record what decisions they've made and any steps that they have taken. The workbook is a step-by-step guide for the team, and of course it exists even after the creator, the participant, the workshop preparer cannot speak for themselves. It's on paper and hopefully kept with one's will and one's personal information sheet and healthcare power of attorney and all the other documents, so that it's easily found when people need a guide to what you wanted in your end of life care or your funeral planning. Our last in-person class was held in Canby 2 days before the country locked down. And suddenly, Kathy Hall is in an amazing job lining up. She had a number of locations in Corvallis and in other parts of the state. And all of that had to be scuttled, of course. And everything went to Zoom. And at first we didn't think we can do Zoom. Then we decided, well, we'll have to shorten it so that it's not so tedious. And we've managed to pretty much do our workshops, our All's Well workshops, in about 2.5 hours. They've been well received. And so, we have Kathy to thank for it and several volunteer trainers for persevering through it and making it work. And just as our volunteers have usually absorbed mileage expenses when they've traveled to do training, the volunteer trainers have begun to pay for their own Zoom accounts. So one of those trainers was our past president, Charlie Landis, who is stepping down as a workshop leader to spend more time with his grandchildren. But today he helped us manage the Zoom meeting, and we spent some time trying to make sure that all of our videos and things would work, and planning this agenda. So I appreciate him for so much time and for coming back, and for all that he's done to serve OMA members for the last 7 or 8 years, however long he's been involved. Through the years, I estimate it's taken several hundred volunteers to establish OMA and to keep it going. We owe them all a great deal. And this prompts me to thank Bill Harris for covering phone calls, and Reverend Connie Yost, who volunteered literally hundreds of hours at the beginning of this year as our office assistant for 3 months. She continues as our treasurer and bookkeeper, and you'll hear from her shortly. She has considerable nonprofit experience, and she's shared that with us, of course, very willingly. She's created a working budget. She's helped us with fundraising, provided detailed reports and oversight for our finances. She's used her technology skills and doggedly, persistently sorted out some of the OMA membership records. We purchased a new database tracking, and some of the old files didn't come over, and she painstakingly ran each one down until it got moved into the right place, or she sorted it out as much as she could. But when our current office assistant, Margot, was hired, Connie worked out all the details of employment. Previously, we'd had people who were working as contractors, and they took care of all their taxes and all their tracking, other than us giving them a paycheck. And so now we have to file employment taxes and unemployment insurance and so on. So her service has really saved us a lot of money. Her dedication is so appreciated. I mean, if we had a volunteer of the year this year anyway, I think Connie would be it. We hired our new office assistant, Margot, who her last name is Nemtsu. It's Margot Fervia Namtsu. But you can remember Margot. She started in April this year, and we really need her. Connie saved us thousands of dollars, but allowed us the time to do our interviews and make a good choice. In fact, we interviewed Margot virtually. We didn't even lay eyes on her until she'd worked a couple of months before we met her in person. She has a lot of experience working in nonprofits, working with volunteers, and already her resourcefulness in finding answers for our members and other callers is proving, as we anticipated, to be invaluable. I hope you agree that OMA members really need this staff member. 60% of our budget is dedicated to the salary and support for her. As Connie will tell you, it would take quite a few volunteers and extreme coordination to even begin to do what our office assistant does, even in her very part-time position. And one of the things she does, of course, is support the committee work. Our Provider Development and Relations Committee has kept on pursuing discounts with mortuaries statewide. Mostly this has been done by meeting on Zoom. We've really focused a lot on family-owned mortuaries. And I want to thank Bill Harris and past board member Elizabeth Jessup for hard work on this, preparing the contracts and discussing them with mortuaries that are interested. I've already mentioned that Riverview has withdrawn, which was a sad thing, but we do have good discounts and some new ones for you. So please look at the list on the website, which we are trying to keep up and add new information as we get it. We post the dates of our trainings, any new providers, any changing practices in sustainable burial. And we are focusing more on sustainability. Let's face it, we've had a great awareness that climate change is real and that anything we can do to leave the planet a better place for the next generation is important. So that's one reason we were so pleased that Elizabeth could come today. We're also sending email newsletters and posting things on Facebook. So if you do Facebook, like us, and you'll be more inclined to see the latest announcements on Facebook. But a lot of our members do not use email and don't use these sorts of social media sites. If you do, and I mean, I'm speaking to the choir because you're online, but if you know other people who are OMA members who just say, I don't know what they're doing, please tell them that if they would give us their email address. We try not to barrage you with too many newsletters, but at least once a month, we're trying to get some information out to you. So, it's sending paper newsletters. We can barely budget to do it once a year. And if we had, a larger donor base, we would like to send more than that, but it's quite expensive to do paper and mailing now, even at bulk mail rates. As your board president, I have been representing OMA on the State Advisory Committee of the Department of Consumer and Business Services. We're discussing rules that we want to recommend to the Oregon legislature to govern endowment care cemeteries. And that is proving to be very interesting. We are advocates, whenever we can be, for consumer rights in the funeral and cemetery industry. We did send you notices over the e-newsletter about the natural organic reduction legislation when it was about, when they were going to have public hearings and it was about to come before the legislature. So we do our best to serve as advocates and keep you informed when we need you to join us in advocacy or in expressing your opinion, especially about legislative matters. But you would not be here if you didn't think that OMA was important and that our work is still needed. It's easy to think that everyone knows that they should plan for their end-of-life care and complete their advance directives and discuss their wishes with family and friends. But a Portland lawyer recently told me that almost none of the people who come to her for estate planning or to make their wills have completed even a simple healthcare power of attorney. I mean, every doctor's office asks you, have you done that? But still, we don't do it apparently. And a national survey that was recently done by the National Funeral Consumers Alliance and the Consumer Federation of America found that only 25% of Americans know their funeral rights. Like this, Elizabeth has just shown you these different caskets and different options for burying people. If you want to build your own casket, by the funeral rule, by the FTC law ruling, they must take your alternative container. They must take an urn that you bring instead of buying one from them. But people don't know that, so they might spend much more than they wanted to, and they might not even really want the casket. They might want a shroud, but they don't know that. Another poll, which was conducted by morticians themselves, the association, found that only 18% of us even shop around. I mean, this is an outlay that is as much as a car in some cases, or at least a major appliance. It's hard to imagine, but it's because it's such a hard time. We don't want to do it ahead of time. We sort of have this, we want to put it off. And so that means that what, 82% of people are just paying whatever they're told at the time, crisis time, at a time of death. So it just seems that OMA is needed and will continue to be needed by each generation that needs to learn as things change. One thing that has happened during the pandemic, which has been hard, is that we have not been able to recruit as many new members. And our numbers are way down. So if you are meeting with people regularly and can tell them, I've just been to an interesting meeting and did you know about OMA? You can be ambassadors for OMA and help us to bring more people in to membership, and frankly, help us generate enough money to keep going. We are so grateful to those of you who do donate. And I apologize that we keep asking you for financial support, but I'm afraid our outreach to you by phone and letter and email is going to continue out of necessity. But I ask you, to what other organization do you belong that never needs a donation again once you have joined? If you want someone to be at the end of the phone when you have a question, if you want an office presence that supports our workshop, if you want a staff support for the development of contracts with mortuaries, this sort of work we've been talking about, please give as generously and as often as you possibly can. Consider on the website, and I think Connie is going to suggest in her talk, that there are many ways, including leaving a small amount in your will. I've just made my will and I've listed OMA among the recipients for a little bit of money. And not that we want you to die anytime soon, but that is one way, giving stock and other things. There's a variety of things that you can do. Even assigning if you recycle cans, you can assign the proceeds from that. So that's on our website, other ways of contributing too. But the other thing is, if you have time, we need a larger group of volunteers. We are a small group and we would really like reinforcements for all of our committee work. If you could volunteer some time in your own community to recruit members, as I've just said, to disseminate information. If you can serve on the OMA board or our committees, or even once a year, go to the mortuaries close by and get an updated price list that we can use. We would really like to be able to post prices even where we don't have cooperating mortuaries. We'd like to be able to do some of the comparison shopping for people because, as I've just said, people don't do it. And it's hard to do it when it comes to dealing with the actual funeral and the death. So please get in touch with us if you can give some time. So now we will hear from our treasurer and bookkeeper, Connie Yost, who, as I said, recorded her report so that she could go on a long distance trip she's been planning for some time. I'm not hearing Connie. I see her, but I'm not hearing her.
Unmute. There we are. Now,
Good morning. I am the Reverend Connie Yost, OMA Treasurer. Well, 2021 has been an unusual year for OMA. We were able to sell 2 of the donated burial plots, which brought in almost $6,000. In addition, I volunteered to be the office assistant for 3 months, which reduced our expenses. So though we do have more cash in the bank right now than we have had, we are also experiencing a shortfall in revenue from donations and memberships. We so appreciate all our members who have donated over the years. We did well in 2020, so I am not sure why our donations are low in 2021. As Susan mentioned, we continue to personally ask members for donations by phone, email, and personal letter. If you are in a position to donate, please do. Until we are able to get out and about again to market our memberships, donations are really the only way we can meet our expenses. Our budget continues to be well under $20,000 a year. I can assure you that I have pared down our expenses to the bare minimum needed for us to operate with a very part-time staff and essential things such as a good relational database so we can keep track of our members. Please visit our website, omaoregon.org, to learn about all the ways you can donate. We accept donations of stock and IRA distributions. You can designate OMA as the charity you want for Fred Meyer Community Rewards, Bottle Drop, and Amazon Smile. Consider a legacy gift to OMA in your will. Thank you for your support, your donations, and for being an OMA member. Good morning.
There they are. I'm going to complete the presentation of the treasurer's report. Would someone tell me whether my sound is coming through okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I don't need to be louder.
No, you're
And
perfect.
thank you. First on the screen, you'll see our expenses budget. You'll see a very large, as a matter of fact, let's go first to the income budget. Can you switch back to the income one? Yeah. The great dominance of that pie chart, of course, is the blue. 71% of our income coming from donations. Our membership is quite large, and many of those are pretty generous. The gray area is a small amount of money from the sale of our end-of-life planning booklet for the All's Well That Ends Well course. Next, moving around to the right, what's labeled record fee there is an administrative fee paid to OMA at the time of the payment of funeral services. The miscellaneous is only 1%. The green area represents the sum of one-time membership fees of what are now $50 for new members. The green, or the next, the orange, is corporate sponsorship. And as you saw presented today, the sponsors each year would be those that are those companies that are willing to pay for some advertising in association with our annual meeting. Now let's switch to the expense budget. We work very hard to limit expenses to the essential. As Connie said in the video, a bare bones. And she has worked hard at keeping us that way. The large orange area is our largest expense and a great value for the skillful, empathetic handling of phone calls, communication, website maintenance, records, and service today as a member of the team with Charlie Landis to manage the Zoom. Margot Fervianiamtu works only 40 hours per month. The green is printing and postage, more than 90% of which pays for one paper mailing we now circulate to our over 7,000 members. We can communicate more often with members, for which we have email addresses, of course. So please, although you are working online today with this meeting, if you haven't given us your email address, we want you to do so. I suppose you actually have given us, because
You wouldn't be
you
here.
got an invitation to come to this meeting, and that's the only way you could have done that. The next is office supplies, a little purple slice. Then comes taxes and licenses. And last, in blue, the telephone, our website, and software at 9%. That then is a reflection of how the money gets spent and where it comes from. At this time, I'd like to add my gratitude to Connie Yost, who as a volunteer has done the bookkeeping and prepared this report for us. Thank you, Connie. We have some cemetery plots besides those that Connie's video mentioned we have sold, that are for sale at what we think are under market prices. There's some plots, some crypts above ground and some spots for cremains available in cemeteries that can be purchased. This ends the treasurer's report, and I'll pass it back now to Susan.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, I mean, as Connie said, that section that was designated for membership and donations, a big chunk of that was really helped by us selling 3 of our plots. And one of the volunteer jobs we have is somebody who could figure out how to get the word out about, we have 2 crypts that are worth a lot of money here in Portland, but how to sell them, and we're doing it for half price. So it's very, we just can't find the buyer at the right time. So anyone who would be interested in working on that, we could use your help. Now, I think it is time for us to talk about electing. I have a report from the nominating committee, and we're going to move into our election of new board members. If we can see that on the, or we've got a poll, right? But I want to ask, before we actually ask you to vote, I want to ask Kathy to unmute herself and tell us just briefly about herself. She is being nominated for a second 3-year term.
Hi, all. Well, I grew up as a Navy junior, which meant that I traveled a lot. And for some reason or another, even as a little 6-year-old, I was interested in funerals. And when we lived in the Philippine Islands, I used to follow the funerals to the burials, which was an interesting experience. And then living in West Virginia, there were a lot of home funerals that I went to a few of them. But when my husband died in 2002, I realized that he had not helped me plan anything. I didn't know what he wanted to do. So that was a bit of a challenge for me. And then when I moved down to Oregon, I found out about OMA and realized how much of a help learning about preparation that I could make for my kids for when I die, what a big help that would be for them. And then I was asked to join the OMA board and help other people learn about preparations through All's Well That Ends Well. And that has been such a thrill for me to watch other people get ready and feel the relief of having those preparations done. So that's why I want to continue to be on the board, to help OMA continue to help you. So thanks.
Thank you, Kathy, for 3 years of wonderful service. That, as I've said, you're the backbone really of organizing the All's Well, but also the annual meetings. Such good ideas. This little history that you put together today. So much time and energy in that. We appreciate it. Another nominee is Bill Harris, who you've already met. Bill is also completed 3 years on the board, steady as a rock, working hard, quietly. Bill, would you like to tell a few things about yourself and why you want to continue?
Thank you. I would like to serve be elected for another term. I have a great deal of interest in the phrase of doing end of life well. It is something we're all going to do, And as with other aspects of life, to the extent that there's a choice, I'd like very much to do it well when it comes. Like the time preceding death, that planning and understanding of what it means to die and be out of the direct actions, interactions with people. And OMA does that by reminding people what the possibilities are, how to arrange for death so that it's done well, which means not a burden to the survivors and hopefully a meaningful experience for survivors. Thank you.
Bill is one of our All's Well trainers, so he does a lot, involved in just about everything, really. And then I do not know that we have a picture of Jay, but Jay is on the phone with us, I think. Do you want to say hi, Jay? Jay Weiss is in Klamath Falls. Ah, there you can see Jay.
Hi.
Can-
I can't tell that you can see me, but that's
We-
okay.
We
I'm
can.
on a phone, not on a computer.
Yeah. Would you like to say anything about yourself? Jay is also being nominated for a 3-year term, but this will be her first.
Yes, and I'd like to be able to word things as beautifully as Bill does. I want to get everybody down in Southern Oregon here to join OMA. I think the Memorial Association is the way for anybody to go, for anybody to plan for peace of mind. And I love how Bill words things. So I'm hoping to hear him a lot over the next year or two.
I understand that you came to, you really had to search for us a bit, which is a lesson. We need to be finding ways that people understand what the Oregon Memorial Association is, but that you became aware of how organizations like ours work because you were affiliated with the People's Memorial Association when your mother was at end of life, and they helped you with her funeral planning, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, and in my 20s is when I first learned about the Washington State Memorial Association. And then, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, it became called the People's Memorial. And that's another lesson in how name changes can confuse people.
Yeah. All
Anyways,
right.
yes, anything I can do to help make OMA stronger, I would love to try whatever I can do online or over the phone in Klamath Falls.
Thank you. All right, so you have heard our slate of 3 people. Now we can put up the vote. Is there any nomination from the floor by chance? We are looking for members of the board. Hearing none, then let's put up the vote, and OMA members are invited to participate in this vote. A poll box will appear on your screen. Click yes or no for each question, and then click submit. We have from Bill Crane, that he votes that the nomination be accepted by acclaim. Well, we can all vote. I don't know if we can do it that way. With the poll is sort of written in here. I don't know if we're flexible enough to put approve that motion. If you are on the phone, not on a computer, you press *9 for a yes. Sheila would like to be,
Aha.
a volunteer. Yes, well, how can we handle that? Can we add her to the poll? Sheila, tell us about you and why you would want to be. Unmute yourself.
Okay. You have me now?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to say, for those that don't know me, I'm Pastor Sheila Scott, and I have been a member of OMA since 2012. And I've also been a volunteer. I've been signing people up ever since 2012. And I would like to be on the board. I believe that I bring dynamic and would be an asset to the board for diversity. And I'm well connected to the churches in the Portland and Vancouver, Portland and Southwest Vancouver, Washington. And I know probably 90% of the people that live in Portland, I'm pretty familiar with in the Afro-American culture. And even though you probably haven't seen me, I've still been, I've been in and out of town a little bit, traveling, but I still sign up people. And I also do a lot of work with seniors. And so I'm in the community a lot, and I try to make people aware of OMA. And it was Funeral Consumers Alliance when I started. But I had heard of OMA way back when they were, when they had the contract with Little Chapel of Chime that was on North Killingsworth.
Yes.
So I would greatly bring value, and I would be excited to continue to volunteer and sign up people in the community. And I also would like, in the interest of time, I won't go into it, but with the situation that happened with Riverview, I feel like that needs to be addressed, because there were some things that I was told that was going to happen and did never take place. So we can talk about that at a different time.
Okay. Well, if you're elected to the board, you can help us resolve that.
Definitely, definitely. But I believe that OMA is an asset, you know, to the community. Since 2013, my family has had a funeral every year through Riverview, except for 2020, because that's when the change happened. Although my sister passed with cancer earlier this year, and she was a member, because of the change, she opted to do something different. But we would like to continue to work with OMA and be very interested. I know some people that would be interested in the natural burial.
Well, great. Someone has asked you to repeat your last name. So it's Reverend Sheila Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
Scott.
Okay. S-C-O-T-T.
Yes. All right. And someone else asked how many members of the board. Our bylaws call for as many as 9. So it is wonderful to have you speak up like that. I'm so glad. I believe I've heard your name before. So let's see, can we do this on the poll the way we were planning to?
I'm unable to edit this poll because the meeting has already started.
Okay. So maybe, what
I
can
would
we do?
suggest that we check out the poll to see if the nominees on the poll are elected, and then address Sheila's nomination by raising hands, which we can all do.
Okay, yes. Do you see? Actually, Sheila's got her hand raised right there, and so is Jay. So let's go ahead and put the poll up. We did have a suggestion that we vote by acclamation, but when you do these things ahead of time, Zoom is not as flexible as at a meeting. Go ahead and put the poll up. Are you raising your hand because you want to? I see Elizabeth Jessup is with us, raising her hand.
Well, speaking for Jay, I was just raising my hand to say, if there's not enough spaces for Sheila to be on the board, kick me off and keep Sheila. She'd be fabulous. I will still do what I can down in Klamath Falls, but now it sounds like it doesn't matter. Go
No,
ahead.
we
vote me
have
in.
enough. We welcome you. Yeah. We have some spaces, so.
So now tapping my screen has gotten rid of the poll. So I think it has to be sent out again, maybe?
It's
Yeah.
it's up, and the only thing I can do at this point is end it. So are some people unable to see it besides Jay?
Yeah,
think
I can't see it. I don't know what happened.
you
It
have to end
showed
the
up.
poll for us to see it.
Pardon me?
I think you have to end the polling for us to see the results.
Actually, at the bottom of the screen, I see that I click on polls and then it comes back up. Do you see that? It's sort of three little bars that are at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, Bill.
Not on my phone.
I got lost my battery.
On your phone, I think you must do *9 to vote yes. Margot, if they voted no, how would they vote no?
I got it.
That's a good question. We didn't.
So they would,
Yeah. If you raise your hand, then you're voting yes.
Okay.
So that's how we did it through the phone. If you raise your hand, then that's a yes vote. Since they're unable.
but I've brought my poll up again, from my computer anyway, by clicking on polls, which is between participants and chat on my screen, if you see that, and it comes back up.
Yeah, 15 people have voted so far.
Okay, so
We have
Everyone-
23 participants. And I am not voting. I haven't voted because it's not allowing me to.
okay,
So 15 out of 22.
okay,
So now what do we need to do to vote
Yeah.
again?
And we have 2 more people that have voted with their hands up. 4 people have voted with their hands up. So we're up to 19 out of 22.
Okay.
At the bottom of your screen, there's something called reactions, and if you click on that, that's where you get the hand.
but don't put your hand up if you did the poll. Use one only.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So is anyone, how are you tallying the
One, two, three,
*9s?
4, 5. So we have 5 hands up, 5 votes. And if you're doing it this way, I'm going to count them as a yes vote for all 3. So
4.
we have 18. Okay, so I think we're good. We have 18 out of 22 plus the extra. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. And then we could address Pastor Sheila.
So we have elected to 3-year terms Kathy Hall, Bill Harris, and Jay Weiss.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now,
you.
let's close that and then let's take a hand up vote by using our reactions. And apparently you can do that on the phone too, so that works. We have
Can you hear? I'm sorry, can you hear me? This is Jay, and I
Yes.
wonder. Okay, now something's happened. It says I'm in safe driving mode and my microphone's unmuted, but my video is stopped and it says done speaking, and I could tap that, but it's not letting me do any of that hand raising. So just count my hand as raised, even though it's not happening.
Actually, your
Okay,
hand is
it is
showing on my screen as raised, so. So now we have the nomination of Sheila Scott, who we have just met and I'm so thrilled. So everyone that is in favor of electing Sheila for a 3-year term, please raise your hand with your reactions hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this.
Okay.
And leave them up.
Yeah, leave him up.
So somebody had their hand up and then it went down.
Yeah, it goes down.
Well, there's two options with the hand up. One is for question and one is to raise the hand. The raise the hand will hold it up there for longer.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I see 14 votes.
Do you see
It's,
mine? It's mine is a brown color instead of a yellow.
I see yours. I've counted yours.
Okay.
But Bill, you haven't voted. Ariel?
Bill said that he lost his battery. He phoned me and said he lost the battery on his laptop.
Oh, okay. All right. The joys of Zooming. Okay, well, let's count this now. Everyone keep their hands up and let's count. 1. Do you see 16 hands? Is that what I'm seeing? Out of 7.
Out of 24 participants, that's a majority.
Yeah,
You said 23.
there are 20, well, there are 24 actually. Somebody came back, maybe Bill came back?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any, now take that hand. It is the majority of the group that we have present. So do we need to take an opposition vote? I don't know.
I doubt it.
We have the
Well,
majority.
If you did opposition, you'd at least see whether or not
Yeah.
the other were.
Is there anybody who is opposed to the election of Sheila Scott for a 3-year term on the OMA board? So take your hands down, those of you.
Can't
Oh,
take 'em down.
my hand is still up. Shoot. Okay, lower hand. Okay.
How do we lower?
If you go back on reactions, what used to say raise hand, does it say lower hand now?
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, congratulations. We are having a board meeting next Tuesday, so I'll be in touch with you all. Now, let's do a couple of fun things before we close this meeting. We want to hear the results of our raffle and who is still on this call that will get the door prize of 2 tickets to go to visit the Japanese garden. So Margot, take it.
Hi, everyone. Okay, thank you, Susan. And I just personally also wanted to thank the board members and all the volunteers who I've worked with at OMA for the last 6 months. Your dedication is really inspiring to me. It's why I chose to work in the nonprofit field, is just to be around a lot of really giving and caring people. And you guys have certainly met that requirement. So thank you. And if you are interested, all the non-volunteers out there in volunteering with us and helping us achieve our mission, please do get in touch. We'd love to have your help. Okay, onto the raffle. So we're going to do this kind of virtually, just like the meeting. We'll start with the raffle for the overnight stay in Lincoln City at Chinook Winds with the dinner as well for 2. How I did this is I printed everyone's name on a list and I put a number by your name and your name has been listed however many times you've purchased a ticket. I'm going to ask Google here to pick a number between 1 and 91, and that's how we're going to pick a winner today. Okay, Google, pick a number between 1 and 91.
Here's a random number, 3.
3. Ms. April Avery. Yay! April is one of our volunteer All's Well That Ends Well presenters. So that is very exciting. April, thank you. Thank you for supporting OMA.
Hallelujah. Thank you. I know just who I can give it to. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. See, this is what I
Awesome.
mean about generous volunteers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, and we have 2 tickets next for our door prize to the Japanese garden. And I did the same thing as well. I printed out the list of attendees. I'm not able to, as we're here live, print the participants list, or at least I never was able to figure out how to do that. So we may be going through here for a minute till we get to someone that's here, because I have a few more names on the list than people that are attending. So, or we can do it this way. How about we ask Charlie, our moderator, to please pick a number between 1 and 60.
23.
23 is Dennis Gilliam. Are you here?
He was, wasn't he?
Was
Yes,
he?
was.
I think he was, yes.
Okay, should we give it to Dennis? Or do we want
Must
to
be
continue
present to
on?
win.
Okay,
No,
must be
we
present
said
to
you have to
win.
be, you have to
You are
hang
right.
in.
Stickler.
Part of our
Okay, give me-
incentive to stay at the meeting.
Okay, Kathy, give me a number between 1 and 60, not 23.
1 and what?
60.
27.
27. I don't think here's either. Rob Gramenz, Gramenz? No. Okay, I wish there was a better way to do this. How about I count down over here the participants? Close your eyes. I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm not gonna look, and I'm gonna see who's on the list, who's number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, our new board member, Pastor Sheila. Yay, okay, Pastor Sheila, you have won 2 tickets to the Portland Japanese Garden.
Good.
Now you cannot never say I never win anything, because you have won something today.
Thank you.
So, yay! Well, thank you to everyone who purchased a OMA raffle ticket for our raffle. That was really generous of you, and we made a nice chunk of change to help support our mission and to help move this organization forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now our board member Kathy would like to say a few words.
I have here a resolution honoring the many contributions of Susan Robinson
Oh.
to the Oregon Memorial Association. Whereas she provided deep knowledge of the death care industry, served as co-president for 2 years, served as president for 1 year, searched for communicated with and interviewed and hired 2 office managers, researched many ways to better serve the OMA membership, led the way to functioning on Zoom, training 5 All's Well That Ends Well on Zoom. Now, therefore, we, the board and members of the Oregon Memorial Association, on this 18th day of September 2021, resolve to thank Susan Robinson with all our hearts and minds for her service on our behalf and wish her well as the years continue on OMA.
Yoo-hoo.
Thank you.
Hey, yes.
Very nice. Thank you very much. It's a
Good
privilege
girl.
to be involved and to have such good people to work with.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was thinking about it. My parents were early members of OMA. They died respectively in 2006 and then 2016. But they gave their bodies to the medical university, and it was very seamless because everything was planned and in a notebook that they had organized. And it occurred to me that at one time we had a family membership, and maybe I was actually a member as a little kid. I don't know. But when I was looking back at some of the charters, I saw one of their very, very good friends, the Reverend Howard Willits, who I think probably recruited them, but they were very great supporters of OMA. So when I got on the board, I remember asking our office staff member, are they still listed as active members? And somehow their names had never been taken off. So we got that, but that's the sort of stuff that is so complicated to keep up with. So they're not, you know, that somewhere in our history, I guess they're in there, but I feel as though it's a little bit of honoring them to be in this work. We put the fun in funeral. But it has been a fun meeting, and I loved this raffle drawing. And we thank our sponsors and wish all of you well during the pandemic. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll be meeting in person one of these days.